We chatted 2 days ago, I think, and you suggested that I start a podcast. You thought that would be a really good way to support my audiobook and also have a background in broadcasting. So you said this is a really good way to market yourself and market your book. And I went and started one on your recommendation. That's a great idea. It was an awesome idea. And you suggested the first person I should talk to is my narrator. And I have a wonderful narrator. Her name is Danielle Fliller. She really brought my book to life, my first book that I've made into an audiobook called Goddess of Rain. She did a fantastic job. I went looking for her because I wanted to start a podcast. And when I heard her voice, that was the voice I had in my head for my main character. And it's told in the first person. So she did a fantastic job. So I did my first podcast with her, and my podcast is called Jane the Author. That's my name that I use on all my social media. So it's called Jane the Author, a close reading podcast. I didn't really want to do, I'm into books, but I didn't want to do book reviews. What I really wanted to do is get with somebody else who's read the same book and wants to do a deep dive on that book, because that's how I enjoy consuming media. If I watch a TV show, if I watch a movie, I'm always going online and I want to hear what everybody else thought. And what did you think of the character arcs? And what did you think of the characterization? So that's what I'm going to be doing with this podcast. So if you're somebody who really likes to just get into the weeds and analyze things in a piece of media, that's what I'm going to do.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. So happy to have everyone back. My guest is here today, and Jane is here, and we're going to talk about her writing journey. We're going to talk about some new things that are happening for Jane, which I am so excited about. I can't wait to talk about this as well. But Jane's here with us today. We're going to talk about writing in the young adult fantasy novel space and all the great things happening. Jane, welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you here.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, we chatted in a pre-chat, just recently, and in that short amount of time, we had a little side conversation in addition to our conversation about being here today. And you went and started something based on a conversation we had, and I am so thrilled. I want to talk about it right at the beginning because I'm excited for you and proud parent moment. I don't know what's going on, but tell me a little bit about some of the new news that has happened for you since the last time we chatted.
We chatted 2 days ago, I think, and you suggested that I start a podcast. You thought that would be a really good way to support my audiobook and also have a background in broadcasting. So you said this is a really good way to market yourself and market your book. And I went and started one on your recommendation. That's a great idea. It was an awesome idea. And you suggested the first person I should talk to is my narrator. And I have a wonderful narrator. Her name is Danielle Fliller. She really brought my book to life, my first book that I've made into an audiobook called Goddess of Rain. She did a fantastic job. I went looking for her because I wanted to start a podcast. And when I heard her voice, that was the voice I had in my head for my main character. And it's told in the first person. So she did a fantastic job. So I did my first podcast with her, and my podcast is called Jane the Author. That's my name that I use on all my social media. So it's called Jane the Author, a close reading podcast. I didn't really want to do, I'm into books, but I didn't want to do book reviews. What I really wanted to do is get with somebody else who's read the same book and wants to do a deep dive on that book, because that's how I enjoy consuming media. If I watch a TV show, if I watch a movie, I'm always going online and I want to hear what everybody else thought. And what did you think of the character arcs? And what did you think of the characterization? So that's what I'm going to be doing with this podcast. So if you're somebody who really likes to just get into the weeds and analyze things in a piece of media, that's what I'm going to do.
What an amazing idea. I love the idea. Now, you said you had her on your audio person that did your voiceover work. You had her on for episode 1. Tell me, what was that like when you reached out to her and said, "Hey, I'm starting a podcast. Can you be my guest?" What did she say?
She was extremely enthusiastic, as you predicted. You said she'll love to do it. And she was very enthusiastic. That's why we were able to get it together so quickly. And it was really wonderful because you know how we do things nowadays. Everything's online and you don't meet people necessarily that you're working with.
Right.
And she did this whole reading for me, and I had never met her. We'd never even spoken. So this was the first time I'd seen her, first time I talked to her. And she did such a wonderful job. And she told me part of the reason she did such a wonderful job is she really connected with the material. So she was very anxious to talk to me too about what I was trying to say, what happened with this character, and where is this going. So it was a very enthusiastic conversation. It was the kind of thing I really wanted. I've been dying to talk to other people who've read the book so I can hear what they have to think and what their take is. So I loved it. It was a great conversation.
What a unique episode one. I've never heard anyone do that. I think, like I said before we hit record, the episode hasn't released at the time of our recording, but I can't wait to listen to this episode. And just to have two people who love the same book, the author and the voiceover actor, in the same space talking about this. Talk about a fly on the wall moment. I can't wait to be part of that conversation and sit at the table with the two of you and watch you go back and forth and talk about this experience of working together. That's amazing.
I think you'll enjoy it. And then that's what I hope to carry on for it. I'm going to reach out to a few other people who are critics and reviewers who've read it as well. But then I'm going to start looking at other people's work, but other people who are like me who really want to just talk about it and talk about what this book meant to them and what do they think the author had to say.
Wow. So again, I have to get this out of the way at the beginning of the episode because it's new news for both of us. And I am so excited for you. And I can't wait to be part of your community, listening to your podcast. Like I said, I have my hand up already. So you have a listener here near Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada. So I got my hand up. I'm ready. I'm ready for this. I'm excited to see the launch of your podcast. It's going to be really great. And we'll have links to that and all the information as well so people can follow along on the journey of this new podcast. So congratulations.
Thank
Wow.
you. You brought me in. It was your idea.
See? Wow. The crowd is going wild. I love
The
it. This is
power
great.
of talking to people.
It is so good. Thank you. Thank you. This is so cool. Okay, let's talk about your author journey, Jane. Tell me a little bit about, let's go back, let's rewind. Where did this all start for you that writing in this genre and young adult fiction and fantasy novels? Tell me how this all kind of happened for you.
Well, my background is journalism. I'm a journalist. Now I mainly work as a publicist. So I've always been a writer, but I really wanted to get into fiction writing. So I started writing a novel 10 years ago, and it was a woman's fiction novel. It was kind of a weird book, I'll have to say. It was, but I put it out there and I didn't know how to market it properly. I didn't, I, it was just a weird book. So I put it out there and I took it down the next day. I put it on Amazon and the next day I took it down because I was just felt so vulnerable putting this book out there that I wasn't sure of, I wasn't confident in. And it was difficult for me to write. It was a bit of a grind to get that book out. So I took it down the next day. So I was talking to a friend and she said, you know what? Why don't you just write something fun and light? Why don't you write fantasy, which I'd never considered before? I love the genre of fantasy. I just hadn't considered writing it. And she said, then you won't struggle with where the plot goes because you can just make it up. If you get into a plot hole problem, you bring in some magic. You just make it up. So okay. And I've always really loved Greek mythology. I've just that's just sort of been in my back pocket the whole time. I have a great interest in Greek mythology. So I decided to bring that in and make it a book, a fantasy novel based in Greek mythology. But I also wanted to connect it to present times, which would make it an urban fantasy. And the reason I wanted to connect it to present times is when you think about mythology, why different cultures have mythology is to explain their natural world.
Right.
So if you have it in present times, explaining our natural world, what was really consuming me at the time was all the things that were happening, all the earthquakes and the wildfires and climate change. And I thought, well, how about I connect that to Greek mythology? Greek mythology explaining why that is happening right now. So that's how it came about. And I also wanted a love story. So there's a love story in there. It's a 3 novel series. And the first one is called Goddess of Rain. That's out there. It's an audiobook and also a Kindle book and a paperback. And then I have Underworld Rising, which is also released as an ebook and a paperback. And then I'm working on the third one, and that's called Edge of Elysium.
Wow. Okay. Tell me about your initial thoughts around taking your book into the audio space. Was somebody there guiding you through that process, or are you just naturally curious about getting an audio version of your book?
I always thought I should do an audiobook because I read that that's where the growth of the market was going. I read that there's actually more sales in audiobooks than ebooks right now. Not completely certain of that, but it certainly looked like it was something that was growing. So that was something that was sort of on the back burner because you have to hire a narrator, right? And I didn't think that was something I had the budget for at the time. Uh, and then my son said, "No, you should do it. You should do one now." And then I started reading the reviews of my book, the first one released, Goddess of Rain. And people referenced my chatty style, that it had a very conversational style. And I thought, that's just a natural for an audiobook. So I really made that the front burner. I'm going to do an audiobook. And because I had this broadcasting background, I thought, okay, I'll do it myself. I'll try that. And I tried taping it and I could not get through a page without stumbling. I could not, I just couldn't do a really good read. So I went, okay, I'll just get an editor to do the editing. So I went looking online for an editor. I went to fiverr.com where you can get all kinds of people who design and do kinds of creative work. And alongside them were all the voice artists. So just for the heck of it, I listened to a voice artist. And the first person I listened to was so good. And I went, okay, this is a reason why they do this and I don't do this. They're actually professionals at this. And they were so good. And it just took a few listens before I came across Danielle. And it was like lightning for me. This was the voice of my main character. It was the voice that I heard in my head. And I just loved it. And I immediately hired her. She's done a fantastic job, really quick turnaround, got things to me very, very quickly. And she did all the character voices. Interesting, her character voices didn't sound the way I thought they sounded in my head. The main character, yes, but these other ones. But I thought that was okay too, because it reminded me of a play where you do a Shakespeare play and different theater troupes do different interpretations. So I really enjoyed that, hearing a different interpretation. So all of it was great. She did it all in one go. And here it is, it's launched.
Okay, so you talk about turnaround time for new authors that are listening. What is kind of an idea of how long does it take to find that person after you found the person you want to work with? How much time goes by before you get the actual finished product back?
She gave me an estimate of 30 days, but she turned it around for me in 21 days. I think that 30 days is probably pretty standard. I mean, an audiobook, mine is 7.5 hours. So I think that's a long time to do narration, right? And they're doing editing. She gave me a finished product, a finished thing that I could load right up to Audible. So I think that's probably actually one of the quicker times.
Nice. What kind of instructions do you give them at the beginning of the process about what you're envisioning from an author's perspective? Do you give them any kind of guardrails, or do you just give them the book and let them go?
Well, she does a little bit of an audition first, actually. You send them a chapter and they send it back. And I did have a couple other people who read who I didn't quite click for me, but she clicked. And then I think she was open to any instruction that I gave her. I was kind of just curious to see what she did with it. So when she sent me the first chapter, I loved it. I didn't want to change a thing. She sent me a couple more, and I think I was open then to being able to change things if I didn't like a character read. But I mean, they're creators too, right? And I really liked to hear her interpretation. So I didn't change anything. But I think just reading the comments on her website and everything, I think people do work that way. They give them lots of feedback and they're quite happy to change things. I just didn't feel the need to.
Yeah. Are you going to be doing Audible books for all your other books as well then?
I am, now that I know how the whole process works. I wish I had just released the audiobook at the same time as I released the paperback and the ebook, because there's marketing you have to do no matter what. You might as well do it for one book, right? Yeah. So I think I'm going to start doing the narration on Underworld Rising very soon. And once Edge of Elysium is finished, because when I'm finished writing it, I will release the audiobook at the same time. I think that's the best way to do it.
Smart. Yeah, again, I love audiobooks because I can be doing something else at the time. I can pause it, I can come back to it. I can rewind it if I'm like, oh, wait, I want to get that again. I want to experience that again. I love being immersed into the book. Right. And for some people who can't physically read a paper book, this opens a whole world to them that I think many authors neglect is if somebody can't read, but they can listen.
Right.
Maybe they're can't they don't have their sight.
Right.
Right. So now that means they'll never see your book. They'll never read your book. So to have an audio version come in and you can now include that community, it's beautiful. It's really, really great idea, I think, for any author to do. So I love that you started with that.
Yeah, all my friends are turning to audiobooks now. I have a bunch of friends who hadn't read my book and they told me I'm not going to. I don't read books anymore. So they're taking the audiobook. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's a time thing. Books are a time. I always feel very honored when somebody reads my book because I know they're taking time out of their day to sit down and read that book. And that's very valuable. But an audiobook, you can, like you say, you can do something else. That's when I do my laundry. I put on an audio. Oops. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that. Anyway, an audiobook, you can do other things. So if you're time consumed, that can be when you're driving to work, or that's when you're doing your dishes. So I think it opens up a whole new audience for your books.
Beautiful. I love it. Okay. So talk to us for somebody who hasn't purchased your book yet. They're on the website of their choice. Their book is there in front of them, and they're ready to add it to their cart. Tell us, what would we experience when we purchase your books? Give us some background to the ones that are available right now. What would you like to say to the person that's thinking about purchasing your book?
Well, first of all, it's in the young adult romantic fantasy fiction, but there's also science fiction in there. And I like to put that out there because it's very interesting to get reviews and hear other people's takes. And some people were a little bit shocked that this Greek mythology, these characters end up in outer space. So don't be shocked. There's a trip into outer space. And the reason why I put that in there is, do you know much about Greek mythology? Is that something that you follow?
I actually had other authors on, and I would love to introduce you to them because that's exactly what they do. But I love history. So I'm with you. Yeah, let's go.
So our planets are all named after mythological creatures or gods and goddesses. Mm-hmm. Our star systems are all named after them. So I consider that's the natural place for these to go. I mean, they're not looking just after the Earth, they're looking after our whole cosmos. So that's why I put them in outer space. But the other thing that came back to me from the reviewers is that it's really fun and fast paced and light. And I have to admit, I didn't actually know that till I heard other people say that, because I was very immersed in my mythology and the messages I'm trying to get out there and the story I'm trying to tell. And in my head, it's very intense. But I hear my readers going, this is super fun and this is very lighthearted. So it's not Game of Thrones. It's light. It's fun. And so just know that going in. If you're looking for something heavy, this is not my book. My books are light and they're fun, but they have things to say.
So that's perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to hear from you. Tell me, you talk about reviews. How important is it for an author to receive reviews back from readers? Because I know when we're purchasing something, it's quick, add to cart, done, close, we're off to the next thing. But when that book arrives and we sit down and read it, and we're like, I should really give a review on this book, but then we forget and we get on with the life and we never come back and do the review. How important is it for you as an author to hear back from your audience about your book?
Yes, please review our books. If you want to support an indie author, that is the number one way you can do that. People can't find us unless we're reviewed. Well, I'm on Amazon, and Amazon, if you want to get into the algorithm, you want Amazon to put you forward, and they don't really put you forward unless there's a certain number of reviews. So even if you're just saying, I enjoyed the book or good book, just so that there's that interaction there, Amazon really needs to see that so that we can get into the algorithm. It's the number one thing you could possibly do for an author is just review them. And the other thing is, we like to read them. I like to hear back from people. As I said, that really actually helped me focus my marketing to see how other people were seeing my book. And make sure I don't forget plot points, because I've got kind of this big universe. And then I find, people really liked that character. Okay, I better make sure I revisit that character and bring that person in. Sometimes it has actually changed my mind about a few things. People that I was not necessarily going to revisit, but people seem to really like. So I thought, okay, I better bring this character in. One character is very unpopular, which was my intention. I did intend her to be unpopular. I just didn't know the visceral reaction people would have to her. So I had planned a character arc where there is some redemption, but I'm going to really pound home on that now to make sure she gets that redemption, since she really seemed to like get some people really reacted, which I love. I love hearing that there's that reaction, right? That's what you want. You want that reaction. But anyway, your reviews, that's sort of the bread and butter. That's gold to an author. Please review us.
Yeah. More than just a star too. Like actually put words down and
Yes.
say exactly what you liked and what was there. And that's funny because I had one author come on and he wrote a book and he had a really slow burn at the beginning of the book and really kind of the novel was just kind of like it was really slow, right? As at the beginning stages. And he did that on purpose because he wanted to go somewhere. And his readers were coming back with like low star reviews. Book was really slow in the beginning, blah blah blah. He's like, that's exactly what I was trying to do, right? I wanted you to go on this journey with me, and I did that on purpose. But I guess the readers didn't understand that purpose, right? So he came out with a second book, and he went the complete opposite. He was like, started off with a bang, and he's like, oh, so it was completely different. But he was listening to his reviews and listening to his readers, which I really like. And the other thing I like about being on Amazon is following the author as well. There's a little follow button and you can follow you as an author, and then you're in the world and you get a thank you message back saying, thank you for following Jane. And now you are there and you're kind of being a part of your world on Amazon as well. So
I didn't know they got a thank you back.
Yeah,
Is that an automatic thing?
Yeah. So it was pretty cool. So that's kind of neat. So I'd encourage everyone that find your favorite author and follow also on Amazon. That's another little tip that I would encourage everyone to do. But leave the review. It's really important for everyone.
Very much so. Yes.
There you go. I love it.
Don't feel pressure. Don't feel pressure what you have to write. I think some people stress that there has to be, a masterpiece. We just want some feedback.
Yeah. Just love it. Beautiful. Okay. So for new authors that are starting out, if you were listening to this podcast in the past, before you started your writing career, what are some of the things that you would have needed to hear early on in your writing journey that would have maybe accelerated your writing or been more of a support, a comfort for you as a new author? What kind of things did you need to hear back then that we can share with the people listening right now?
It's a marathon, not a race.
Okay.
I wish I'd realized like how long it takes to do everything. And that's the process, because you hear these overnight stories, somebody who maybe sat down for a month or so and pumped out a book, and this book and then they released it and it was an overnight success. Those are such rare stories. I personally don't know anybody that's happened to. It takes a long time to write something, I think. I mean, I'm pretty quick, but it takes a long time to write something of quality and then release it. And then there's the big hill to climb, which is the marketing. And that takes a long time. There's a lot of pieces that have to come together for that, which is using, quite frankly, a different set of brain skills than the writing. And you have to learn that. So I'd say just don't be discouraged that these things take time. It just takes time to do everything. I wish I'd known that in the beginning. I think I had unrealistic expectations that once I launched it, it would just be boom out the door. But I'm having a steady progression, but it takes a while.
So in addition to your exciting new podcast coming soon to a podcast player near you, what else are you using to promote your writing and get it out there in front of your community?
I have a website and I have a blog on there, but what's really helped for me is the advertising. I advertise on Amazon. I tried out Facebook. I didn't find that was the greatest for me, but I'm learning Amazon. Amazon's a whole thing on its own, learning all the algorithms of Amazon and learning how to bid for your ads. And that's a whole thing. And I'm continuing to learn that. I also, the good thing about doing Facebook was I found out who my demographics were. And my demographics are very young, under 25.
Nice.
So then I had to figure out, well, where do under 25-year-olds hang out? TikTok. And I am, as you can see, I'm not under 25, and TikTok is not my natural environment. So I didn't even know how to start on TikTok, how to do that. But I thought I have to have a presence there. But I don't dance. You know, do
Yeah.
you want to, I can't sit there and dance. I can't, whatever is going on TikTok, I can't do this. So I realized that that didn't really matter because I wasn't going to monetize myself through TikTok. This was just to connect with the people I needed to connect with. And for me, that's reviewers. So book talk. I need to connect with those people on book talk who will review my book. So that's a small audience. So what I decided to do is create quality content around Greek mythology. So I was doing sort of the Greek myth of the day. And that really worked for me. I got followers who were very interested in the content, and that led them back to my book. And I got people who were book talkers who wanted to review my book. And that opened up audiences for me that I don't think I would have had otherwise. I'm a Canadian. And so I thought my natural audience would be Canada and the US maybe. But I actually have quite a bit of readers in the UK.
Nice.
And now Australia, because I had a book talker in Australia talk about my book. So these are audiences I would never have reached had I not been on Book Talk. So, or TikTok. Book Talk is the part of TikTok. And so I love that. And so I'll say again to people who are just starting out, some of these different avenues are kind of daunting. And I found this one daunting, but it just give yourself time and figure it out, and you will, and it works.
I love how you talk about go to where your community is. That is really important for podcasting with your new show, with writing your book, any content creation. Find out where your people are. What you call it, the water cooler, right? Where do they hang out? And be there and interact and be part of the community. And by doing that, it's not salesy to be there because you're genuinely interested in your topic and you would love to nerd out and talk about Greek mythology with anyone who wants to have 5 minutes. Oh, I'd love to talk to you about A, B, and C. Oh, I love A, B, and C. Yes, we're best friends. That's where you build your community. And then people come back and they're like, you have a podcast, you have a book. Oh my gosh, right? And I love building that community around what you're working on. So tell me a little bit about from your perspective now with your new podcast, very early days, the connection between a podcast and a book. What are you seeing or what are you excited about when you marry the two together? What are you going to see as a benefit for you as an author by having a podcast?
I think it goes back to what you're talking about with community, because these things that we do are you're kind of alone. You're sitting there writing your book. You're alone under your duvet. You're with your computer on your lap writing. That's how I do it. And you're alone. And your friends don't necessarily connect with you on that level. I don't think I know any friends who are into Greek mythology, quite frankly. So it's wonderful when you go out into the world and you start, like when I went onto TikTok, when I went onto my Facebook group and Instagram and now podcasting, you connect with people who are connecting with you on that same level because it's a big wide world out there. It's just most of those people don't live around the corner from us. They're in other places in the world. So now it's your chance to connect with them. And it's wonderful. Honestly, I feel seen. I feel when somebody reads my book or reads a post, I almost feel like a part of my soul has been shared and I'm getting something back. And people are so nice and so kind. Maybe it's because it connects with them too, and it's connecting to a part in them and they're excited. Like I can talk to somebody else who's into this same thing as me. It's wonderful. So to me, the podcast is just a natural extension of your community and building community. And right now I'm talking about my books, but I'm going to talk about other people's books. And as you say, geek out with somebody over somebody's book. Like that's the most fun thing, isn't it? To sit there and talk about something with someone else who's equally obsessed as you are.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm going to send you, after we're done here, I'm going to send you a connection, someone in your part of the world that would love to connect with you. They're also an author in your space. You two would be best buddies for sure. So I will send you all that information, past guests for this podcast. And I think the two of you would really get along well. And like I said, just to connect on that level and go, it's not just me. There's someone else in the world that gets me. I love it. So that's what I love about all of that community building. So if you're a new author, get out there, start building community right away, even before your book launches. Get out there, participate, speak with your community, meet them, learn from them. Don't wait till your book is out. Start right now. Get into the community right away and it's going to help you in your writing process, I think.
I completely agree. I wish I'd done that actually. I hadn't done that. I didn't know how to get connected. I didn't know actually how accepting and open people were because I was sort of lurking on different boards and seeing people talk about books and talk and authors talk, but I didn't participate because I thought, well, I'm not published. Who wants to hear from me? But they do. It's a very welcoming community. People do want to talk about it. So I wish I'd done that earlier.
Good. So, okay, so before we close off, again, I think we talked a little bit at the beginning about your podcast as far as guests. Tell me who would be your perfect guest. They're listening to us right now. So let's talk to them. Who is your perfect guest that we would love to come on your show? And just a little bit more about the show for a new listener as well. Let's talk about that and just kind of tie this all together, I think would be kind of nice.
Well, I'd like to find a reader, and they can be a writer as well, but they don't need to be a writer, but a reader who is very passionate about books and not just whether a book is good or bad, but how this book was put together and what that author is trying to say. So I want to take a really deep dive into other people's books. So my ideal guest would be somebody else who just wants desperately to talk about a book with me. So I guess if you have an idea, if there's a book that you've read that you really want to share with another person, and that's something I can read too, I would look for somebody like that, somebody who just really, really wants to share book stuff with me.
Awesome. And one little tip for you as well as a new podcaster is maybe look into signing up for the Amazon affiliate program. And then you can have clickable links to the book from your podcast. And people can, when they buy the book, you'll get a small amount back from Amazon by participating in that. So there's whole rules all around how you disclose all that information, but that's one way to maybe make a little bit of income to support the podcast as well and point people towards the book. So that's one thing I do in my shows is I have those links available, and just make sure you let people know that clicking the link means that I might get a small amount back, but thank you for supporting the show by supporting our authors and using the link that I provide. So that's one other way you can help to support the podcast endeavors you're doing now.
Great idea. I will do that.
Good.
Thank you.
Awesome. So before we close off, let's send everybody to you. Where do we find you? I know you're active on TikTok. Where's the best place for our listeners to connect with you about your podcast, about your books, about you as an author? Where do we go?
Well, you can go to my website, which is www.janefrkovich.com. And Frkovich, it's a tough one. It's spelled FRKOVICH.com. So you can sign up for my newsletter there. If you sign up for my newsletter, I'll give you a free story, or you could connect with me. I have an audiobook out now, so I'm giving out audio credits for people if you're in the US and UK, so you can connect with me that way. My new podcast is called Jane the Author, a close reading podcast, and that will be on Audible. What else can you do? And buy my book. Go on to Amazon. So my books are called Goddess of Rain, Underworld Rising, and soon it will be Edge of Elysium. So find those on Amazon.
Beautiful. Jane, thank you so much for being part of the podcast. Congratulations on your new show. I'm all tongue-tied because I'm so excited about it. And I'm really looking forward to the next book and having you back again and maybe having you on my How to Podcast series podcast. We can talk about that over there as well. I'm so excited that we had a conversation and it led to you making the leap into podcasting. And I really want everyone listening to go support you and to encourage you. And again, like, review, follow, share your podcast, do the same for your books, and continue to build the community around something amazing that you're doing. And I can tell there's so much passion for what you do that is just going to radiate in everything that you write and say on the microphone. So congratulations on so much great stuff ahead. Really exciting.
Thank you, David. Thank you so much for your help. You're like putting me in another direction. But this is why this sort of thing is really amazing. You put me in a whole nother direction I wouldn't have thought of. And now I'm going to put a lot of my effort into that because it's all a very good idea. So I really appreciate your support. I appreciate what you're doing for authors too. We need this kind of support, right? You're helping us build community. So I so appreciate it.
Thank you. And everyone, if you want a good idea of a great first episode, go check out Jane's podcast, because what a great idea to have your voice talent on your episode to talk about your book. What a unique opportunity. To be honest, Jane, I have never heard anybody do that before. In my 190 episodes here on Living the Next Chapter, you're the very first person who has ever done this. that I've spoken to around the world. So I think you're like setting a trail ahead of us for everyone to go, I think I'm going to follow Jane's lead because that's a great idea. And you executed it. So it was our conversation, but you did the work. So well done. Well done. I can't wait to hear that episode.
Thank you. It was your idea. I'm not going to take credit for it. It was your idea, but thank you.
Really good. Everyone go check out all the links in the show notes. Jane, thank you so much for being part of the podcast. And again, cheering you on, your fellow Canadian. Let's go. Let's do this. This is great. Good stuff.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for being here on Living the Next Chapter. I hope you enjoyed this episode. We enjoyed having you here on the podcast. Our authors are amazing. I hope you appreciate their time, their effort to make this possible. If you know an author, if you want to recommend an author, that's a good idea. Hey, if there's an author that you really would love to hear about or hear from, if you tell me, if you send me a message, you speak pipe on our website, livingthenextchapter.com, send me an email, go over to livingthenextchapter.com, send us a message. We will forward your message to that author and say, listen, you are being requested to be on Living the Next Chapter. Our audience can't wait to hear from you. You can help shape the show. Yeah, you. You could do that right now, actually. You got a minute, right? Okay, how about you do that? livingthenextchapter.com. I'll see you over there. Recommend an author. Yeah. See you. Thanks.